Hello, everybody. I'm Jackie K. Cooper, and I am so thrilled to have Karin Slaughter here with us today. Karin, you have become a cottage industry. You've got what, Will Trent, the TV series on ABC, entering its third season.
Yes.
Third season. You've got a new book out this month. This is Why We Lied, a Will Trent story. You've got Jessica Biel. And y'all are developing what? The Perfect Daughter? Is that the name?
Good daughter.
The what? The Good
The
Daughter.
good daughter.
The Good Daughter.
Yep.
My gosh. What else?
That's it. That's enough.
I, let me when little Karen Slaughter was growing up,
Yes.
did you ever have any idea this was going to happen?
No. Well, so I always knew I wanted to be a writer. That was part of my identity from a very early age, but I never knew you could be successful at it. And little me was right because most people cannot be successful. So I'm very aware every day how lucky I am. I like to think that I'm super talented and I'm
You are.
great and all these things, but there's a lot of people who are super talented and great who never have this level of success. So I feel really fortunate that I was in the right place at the right time and it all worked out and I'm able to do what I love doing, which is being a writer.
Well, what amazes me is you kind of, in the recent few years, broke everything open for everybody else. Michael Connelly's got all of his stuff going on. Jeffrey Deaver's got Tracker going on. You have all, but suddenly novels are back in vogue. It seemed like for so long that people who make movies and TV streaming series and all that, it didn't dawn on them that they had all this great material right in front of them.
Well, I think Mike and Jeff would be the first to tell you that when they had their stuff adapted very early on, they were not involved in those adaptations. And now I think the difference is these people who are knocking on our doors from Hollywood understand how valuable it is to have our opinion, that we know the characters better than anybody else, that we know our readers, that we understand what they like about our stuff, and Mike was really involved with his Amazon series, making sure that Bosch was the Bosch that you see on the page. I think anybody who's read Lee Child knows that Lee had a hand in Reacher because it's very close to everything we love about Reacher. And it's a massive hit because Lee knows what his readers love. So I think that's part of the zeitgeist, is not that suddenly they've realized there's great stories here. They've realized there's great storytellers, and Alifair Burke also is another great example. She's got something filming right now. And, it's just a really good time to be an author who is interested in telling stories on the screen.
Well, now with The Good Daughter that you're involved with, is that a one and done series, like one season, or is it possibly going to be a continuing like Will Trent?
I envision it as one, but actually, weirdly, there's another story. I did a short story for that as an introduction to these characters when The Good Daughter came out. So there's at least another season in there if anybody is interested. But we'll see what happens. So I'm perfectly happy with just having a limited series. I think it's a great story for the screen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it next year.
What I love is that it's announced and then it happens. I see so many authors who say, "Oh, so and so bought my book," and then it just sits there forever. And it seems like with you and these other authors that you name, it actually moves once you, or maybe Will Trent had been 20 years in the making, or
Maybe, I have to say it's really important to have a partner who knows the stories and the characters. And I'm extremely fortunate that Liz Heldens, who is the producer of Will Trent, and Daniel Thompson, who is the showrunner and also a producer, they understand the characters, they put in the work. Ramon Rodriguez listens to the Will Trent books on audio. He's very good at the character. He's capturing the essence of the character in a really remarkable way because he's putting his own stamp on it too. And I think that's important because you can have an adaptation that goes wildly different from the way the books are, and you kind of end up dividing people on, well, I like the books, or I like the show, or, you know, which is fine. People have their preferences, but I'm really happy that they're doing such a good job with the show that a lot of my readers love them both.
Well, I think I wrote you and told you, I just split into multiverses.
Yeah.
Got the Will Trent multiverse in television. We've got the Will Trent multiverse in books. They are the same person, but they have different storylines.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, one of the things I ran into, I think I talked to you about this before, when Pieces of Her was on Netflix with Toni Collette, she was very close to how physically I envisioned the character of Laura. But the character of Laura in the Netflix series was very different from the character I had written. And so when I wrote Girl Forgotten, which is kind of a follow-up to Pieces of Her, it was really difficult for me to keep them separate. I had to keep reminding myself, okay, that's Tony's character, not your character. So you need to be really careful to pull back some of the things you love that Tony did and make sure this is who you're supposed to be writing.
Well, now, do they film most of Will Trent in Atlanta?
All of it, yeah, yeah.
So you're able to drop by the set and
Yeah, I mean, I have an open invitation, but I don't want to go in and gum up the works because, you know, people would have to pay attention to me and not just let me poke around on my own. And I'm very conscious, like there's hundreds of people there, each one doing a very specific job, and I don't want to get in the way. But they're so generous about, you know, letting me come, and I read all the scripts and they listen to me when I say, oh, well, this character actually, her backstory is this, or, you know, it's very collaborative in a way that I want it to be, and not too little or too much. Because I also have a job to do. You know, I'm writing my next book now, and they're gearing up for season 3, and they're already doing scripts and breaking out the show, and I'm working solely on my book and getting ready for my new book tour. So it's nice to have us in our different lanes, but to know that they can cross at some point.
I know they are just thrilled to have you in close proximity. So if they do have a question, or what is this backstory? Did I miss this or whatever? You're just a fountain of knowledge.
Well, I am, you know, but sometimes I have to think, or I'll think, well, I think I discussed this part of Will's history in this book, and I'll have to go back and make sure I'm right, because there's been quite a lot of books. I think we're up to 12 now, so I want to make sure I'm being accurate.
Now, will the two lives of Will Trent converge at some point? Will we get into the Sarah Linton? Will there be a love triangle in the Will Trent series?
Well, my Sarah would not be in a love triangle. And I think that the way they've handled the Angie situation, she's really gone beyond the pale. You know, Will has certain lines, and she really crossed that line.
The ending
It's
of the
really
series,
interesting,
yeah.
yeah, seeing how they're handling that in the new season. So I guess the long story short is, yes, eventually Sarah will appear. I don't know when. They're still talking about that, and how to frame it, because it is the Will Trent show. You know, in a book, I've got 500 pages. I can give them both weight and have faith, be on the same footing, and have fun with that. But in the show, they've got basically 44 minutes, and they've got a lot of story to tell. So we'll see what they come up with. One thing I can say is I'm confident that whatever they do will be the right thing to do for the show.
Well, I'll tell you, reading this is why we like the dynamic of Will and Sarah thrives in this book.
I really worked on that, because I think it's a light spoiler to say that this is their honeymoon, right? We
Yeah,
all knew they were going to
that's
get
the first of
married.
the book. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't know me well if you thought I was going to have a beautiful wedding ceremony just for fun. But they are on their honeymoon and they're figuring out. So it's very different being a couple who's dating and committed to each other and being married. And Sarah is very conscious of a lot of mistakes she made in her previous marriage. And so it's nice when she sees, oh, wait, this is like a very defining moment. Like, am I going to be this person to him or am I going to be that person? Am I going to try to change this? Am I going to accept it? And 9 times out of 10, unless it's leaving your socks on the floor, which can be changed if you're motivated enough, the personalities are set. So how you respond to a person is the only thing you can control. And so Sarah is kind of making those calculations of choosing her battles, and I'm not going to be the wife who nags him, right? And he's
And she
kind
sees
of choosing his too. He's like, I'm not going to be the guy who lies to his wife because
because
he
he had
doesn't
a
have the
previous
balls to
marriage.
be honest, right? So
Yeah.
it was fun having them figure out those things on the page and thinking, wow, they've both been in really, at times, really bad relationships, and they both want this to work, and so they're making the choices that will help make this work.
Well, and it just adds so much to the story. I mean, you've got a murder mystery and, who did it, whatever, but having them and their relationship color different areas of it, just raise it to another level. And
Thank you. One thing, so there's a character that Will meets here, who reminds him of the way he could have gone in his life. And that to me was really interesting to write about because Will's a guy who grew up in the foster care system. He aged out of the system. He was never adopted. He is someone who's really scarred by this, but he tries to move on from it. And then he meets someone from similar circumstances who couldn't move on from it. And he struggles with that. Like, why was I able to move on and he wasn't? And I think Will figures out, okay, well, I had people who cared about me, who, even though maybe I didn't know they were in my life, they were helping guide me, and this other person didn't. And that means that this is a good thing, right? Letting people in, trusting people. And you see that throughout the book is him coming to terms with maybe these people in my life who can sometimes be annoying because they're very pushy, like Amanda, who's always battling with him and trying to push, push, push. Will thinking, okay, well, maybe I was actually lucky to have this as opposed to burdened because I could have taken a different path had these people not been there.
yeah, I think one of the characters maybe in the book makes reference to sliding doors, the movie Sliding Doors,
Yeah.
and with Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's what made me go. We started out in basically the same place, and I went here and he went there, and in retrospect, it's great to see what happened, like you said, and who influenced who, and whatever. I
Mhm.
also like the description. One of the characters says it's like an Agatha Christie closed door mystery entwined with V.C. Andrews. Or
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that because it is. That's a great description of it. Uh,
Yeah.
I was reading it and my wife said, what's happening? And I said, I'm two-thirds of the way through or three-fourths of the way through, and I have no idea who committed the murder.
Well,
And
thank you.
it's,
I
it is
worked really hard on that.
that is a great compliment because usually at least oh yeah, I know. You may be wrong, but you think you know. I knew I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun of doing a locked room mystery is because you can really, so you have a limited number of characters in this one resort, right? Where Will and Sarah are taking their honeymoon.
Mountain
And
Resort.
yes. And so it, I think that my idea of how a reader would come to this is I want to make you really think this is the person. And then I want to make you think, oh, wait, no, that's not it. And then, like
That's
5 chapters later, I want you to be like, well, maybe it was that first person. And to me, that's always the fun of a locked room mystery, is because there's a set number of suspects. You're not going to meet the bad guy later on in the story and suddenly he's the bad guy. It's just, these are the ones, these are the only people who could have done it. And what is the clue that's going to open this up? How are we going to figure out who the bad person really is? In this case, a murderer, obviously. So to me, that was a lot of fun to play with. It's just that sort of, I want to make you really certain this is the bad person, and then I'm going to jump to this bad guy or this bad guy or whatever until you kind of give up and you just let the story tell itself.
Well, I was going to say, did you start off with, okay, I'm going to have a murder at a resort, and then I know who did it, and I'm just going to work my way to that? Or
Yeah.
you just start writing and let the story take you where?
No, I always plan it out. I've never started a book without knowing how it's going to end, basically. I always know who the bad guy is. And so for me to like work from the front to the back is a really big gift, because I have to know where I'm going. Otherwise, I kind of just spin out. But it also gives me an opportunity to plant clues along the way. As you know, I feel it's really important to play fair with the reader. There's not going to be a butler suddenly who appears at the end of this. So I'm
Yeah.
just really careful how I block that out and how I get to that point, because I never want someone to say, I got to the end of your book and I was like, what the hell? Where did this person come from? Right? I want them to say, holy
No.
crap, I can't believe I missed it.
Oh, how are you just constantly thinking up ideas for novels though? I mean,
I am. Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
like,
It's
oh
very
well,
annoying
I
to
remember
be.
that one. I'll start that book next, and then I'll have after that I'll have this story that I know, and blah 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 blah.
Yes.
Because you
A
said you're
lot
already
of,
working on your new book. I mean, are you've
yeah.
already got the next one planned?
Yeah, I'm working on it. Yeah, it's a standalone. But a lot of
Oh,
times when I'm writing, like when I was writing this book, I had a great idea for the next Will Trent book. But I wasn't quite ready to write it because I needed to think about it a little bit longer. So I started this other book that I'm really excited about. It's a standalone. And it's been a lot of fun because I'm creating a new world, and it's a way for me to go off from the series that I'm so familiar with and challenge myself in different ways. But I'm very excited about getting back to Will Trent on the next one.
when you write, Karen, do you write on a computer? Do you write on a typewriter? Do you write longhand?
I know two writers who write longhand. Rita Mae Brown, Mary Kay Andrews does a lot of writing longhand, which is crazy. I could never do that
I can't
because
imagine.
yeah, it's not how I think. I really am more tactile with the keys, so it generally has to be on the computer for me to write. I think I had a typewriter in high school, but I don't remember it much.
How long does it actually take you to write a book?
Well, just the physical part of writing it usually takes 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
But I think about them for a long time. Like the book I'm working on now, I had the idea for it a couple of years ago, and I had to think through different characters, different plot points. Who do I want to tell the story? How do I want to tell it? And what's my way into it, right? Because everybody has an idea for a good book, right? At least one great idea. And the real work of being a writer is figuring out how to express that idea, how to have characters move the story along. If it's a thriller, how to have clues and how to plot it and how to keep suspense and where the tension comes from, because tension can't just come from the who done it. It has to come from the characters and the jeopardy and all these things that you have to juggle. So the idea is not really the hard part. The hard part is, how do I turn this into a manuscript, and how do I turn that manuscript into a book? And so a lot of times I think about a story for a couple of years before I find the entree into it, right? So who starts telling this story? Is it going to be the main character? Is it a victim? Is it like a secondary character? And at what point in their lives do I start that story, right? So that's there are all kinds of different ways to implement this idea, but finding the starting point for it is the really difficult part for a lot of writers, and it's kind of separates the chaff from the wheat.
That's one thing I love about this new one is you just plunge right into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, and they went off and then da 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 da. No, there's a murder, boom,
Yeah.
and you're off to
Well,
the
it was
races.
interesting trying. That's a very good example because it does start with this murder because I couldn't just start it with Will and Sarah being so happy, right? And
Yes,
so I just right off the bat, I got to tell you, don't worry, somebody's going to be murdered.
yes, and here it
And it
is.
was, yeah, and it was so, and I worked back from that. It gave me a little breathing room to show you Will and Sarah being happy. Because you're like conscious of this clock. Okay, the murder's coming, right? So
But,
I have a little grace there.
but you know what a fan I am of yours and your writing, but the balance has to be right, and you got it so right. Because if you then start all over and have a long preceding, you didn't do that. You went back and did a little bit, but you kept moving the story forward.
Yeah,
Am
yeah.
I making
And
any
you know,
sense?
the
But
fun
that
is I
balance,
know because you know right off the bat there's a murder and who's murdered. Then as a reader, as you are seeing these people, right, meeting people who are at this lodge, meeting, family members and guests and all these other people, I would hope that as a reader you're looking for clues, right? So who wants to murder this person I know is murdered? How does that come about? And that is a lot of fun, I think, just to plant that right off the bat. You need to start paying attention because it might seem innocuous that you meet, the chef or the busboy or the this or the this crazy guest, but you need to pay attention because one of them might be a murderer.
well, what is a lot of fun too is always getting the chance to interview you. I look forward to these times that we talk. You've been a good friend for many, many years now. I was thinking the other day about when I first met you and how long it had been, but
You had full head of hair.
yes, I did. And I was more like this. The years have passed. But Karin, thank you for taking the time to talk to us and good luck. I don't even need it, but I'm looking forward to the reaction to this book and seeing all the things that are forthcoming. And you
Thank
deserve
you.
them all.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Karin. This has been Jackie K. Cooper's interview with Karin Slaughter.